My hair looks so weird. It's so deflated. What is wrong with you, baby? Liv! Liv! Hi, hello, how's it going? It's Lo. February has come to an end. I had many plans for February. I had a very big TBR that I wanted to get through. That did not happen. At all. Being an attorney for unions is all fun and games until 3 of your clients go on a strike in the same week, and then you're like... Anyways, I did barely any reading this month, and the readings that I've done were, questionable. So, let's talk about them today, shall we? The first 3 books that I read in February, I'm going to list all of them, 3 of them together, because I read them in succession. Also, I don't want to talk about them. Were, the Horsemen of the Apocalypse series by Thalassa. Basically, kissing the coronavirus, but make it biblical. The plot of the story is basically the same in all of the books. Like, there comes a Horseman of the Apocalypse. He sees a human woman. She has something that is appealing to him, and that means that the Horseman of the Apocalypse falls in love with a human woman, and they forgo their purpose as the Horsemen of the Apocalypse after dragging said woman up and down for like ages. So basically that's the premise of the story. The first book is called Pestilence, and we're following Pestilence and a girl in Canada. Then the second book is called War, and we follow War and a girl, I think it's in Palestine. And I know the story ends up being in Egypt, something of that. And the third book is called Famine, and it's set in Brazil. And I was like, I'm not sure I'm gonna... Do I do this? Do I do this? And then I ultimately decided to employ... Let's talk about famine, shall we? I should technically be offended by famine. In Famine, we're following this girl called Ana da Silva, which... Okay. And basically, Ana da Silva is a sex worker working in the apocalypse, and she meets famine, and the whole story is set in Brazil. I think that I should probably be offended by this, but then again, I don't think that being associated with sex work or having a character with my nationality who happens to be a sex worker is something inherently bad, especially if the character has reasons to go into sex work and her reasons were, economic, and that happens. I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite and say that there is no such thing as prostitution in Brazil and that there are no women who go into prostitution for economic reasons in Brazil, because that would be a lie, and it would also be hypocritical of me, seeing that I've worked in a red light district of my city for quite some time as a volunteer, and, sex work is work. What the fuck should I say about it? Like, it's not that this character happens to be Brazilian and happens to be a sex worker with plenty of reasons to be a sex worker that is inherently offensive to me. What is offensive to me is when Brazilian women are denied entrance in the European Union because the European Union is cracking down on sex work. It is offensive to me when, upon saying my nationality, men suddenly think that they have a right to touch my body the way that they see fit. This is offensive because it's reductionist. It reduces my nationality to a single use that happens to be sexual, and it's very demeaning in that sense. However, I don't particularly mind having a character who happens to be a sex worker and the story is set in Brazil. There are many Brazilians who are very upset by this, and rightfully so, and it's entirely in their right. It's definitely just not something that bothers me. On the other hand, that's a very low-hanging fucking fruit. We'll admit, there was absolutely no fucking other profession that this woman could have had other than prostitute. Like, are you really fucking saying this to me? That there is no, really? It's very clear that this book was a book written by an American who did some quick Google search on Brazil and decided that that was good enough. And the result was a very American reading of what apocalypse would look like in Brazil. And it was really bad. It was really bad. I think that it was so bad that I didn't even get offended. It came to a point where I was just having a lot of fun because of how bad it was and how bad the rep was of Brazil. Like, she describes fruits in places where those fruits don't grow. She describes them crossing distances in mere days on horseback that would take at least 2 weeks to get through. There's this moment where there's a drug dealer. Amazing. It was like the Brazil bingo. And I think that this is kind of like a missed opportunity, you know. Brazil has a long story with hunger. Starvation and stuff is so prevalent and used to be so prevalent in Brazil that it's part of the culture of Brazil in certain areas, like the Northeast. It's a very basic misunderstanding of Brazil and the culture and stuff. Did I expect anything else of an American? Absolutely fucking not. But however, this woman did such a bad fucking research job that she ended up giving what was the highlight of my month for me. The climax of the story happens in a city called Taubaté. E aí, véi, eu terminei de ler o livro, fechei o livro e eu fiquei 40 minutos rindo sozinha. Porque eu era o apocalipse de Taubaté. O apocalipse. For those of you who are not Brazilian and did not get the reference, Taubaté is a city in the countryside of São Paulo. And a couple of years ago, a woman actually conned a TV station into giving her a nursery for 4 children because she literally shoved a beach ball up her dress and said that she was pregnant with quadruplets. And the TV station just threw money at her and it was all a scam. And nowadays in Brazil, when you say that something is off Taubaté, it means that something is fake. So I just spent the entire climax of the book going, Apocalipse de Taubaté. Anyways, I gave the first 2 books 3 stars for entertainment, and I gave Famine 2 stars. It's probably a 1 star, but I added an extra star just because it made me really happy, so yeah. Oh god, I need to stop laughing. The next book is serious, god fucking damn it. The next book that I read is Scenes of Subjection by Saidiya Hartman. This is a book that I read for college, but I thought this was absolutely amazing and incredible and explains so much about the formation of race relations in the United States that I thought it was a missed opportunity to leave it out of my wrap-up. Basically, in Scenes of Subjection, Saidiya Hartman is looking into the acts of terror that terrorized the enslaved blacks into the enslaved subject. It's very, very dense, but the point that I walked away the most in this book was that when we're thinking about slavery, and this is true in the United States and this is true in Brazil as well, we're usually thinking about the huge acts of violence, like the whippings, like the mutilations, like all of that. When in fact, the making of the slave was done on everyday acts of terror, including acts that one would not necessarily perceive as terrorizing, and also the resistance to those acts of terror came from acts that an untrained look wouldn't see as subversion, wouldn't see as resistance. So, for instance, she gives the examples of the dances that the slaves would create within the context of slavery, like, for instance, juba, which is something that I did not know existed, and I thought it was quite interesting to learn about. It's quite similar to capoeira in a sense, but capoeira has this aspect of a fight, and it was, you know, like a fight that was hidden as sort of like a dance. But just like juba, it was often performed for the sight and for the delight of the slave owner, when in fact the slaves were actually articulating ways in which they could denounce the oppression and the conditions of slavery. And she also talks about how there were certain acts like minstrel, for instance, which is another thing that I did not know existed because, again, there was no such thing in Brazil. Brazilian racism is very different than United States racism, and that's what kind of like I want to drive home. And it was actually pretty interesting to see how certain things like that were used to put slaves in their place were actually still carry on to this day. I think this made me more aware of the historical baggage of blackface, the historical baggage of speaking AAVE, the historical baggage of utilizing characteristics of blackhood and actually utilizing this as a way to terrorize Black people into occupying the place that they should. And Saidiya Hartman specifically talks about this because she's very interested in the self-making of the freed slave after abolition and after the failure of the Reconstruction. And I thought this was particularly interesting to me because, like I said, the context of slavery in Brazil was very different than the context of slavery in the United States. I'm not saying that the United States had it easier. I'm not saying that Brazil had it easier. I'm just saying that it were very different types of colonization and very different types of slavery. Brazil never experienced segregation in the level that the United States experienced, when it, in fact, it was quite the opposite. There was a lot of miscegenation. So I think this book really gave me a really interesting place to start thinking about how the same processes can affect different places differently, and how in the specific case of Brazil, slaves would find other ways that were not necessarily the ways that existed in the United States to kind of like find a way to self-make and find a way to resist. It's interesting for me to have a place to kind of compare the Black history in my own country with the Black history in the United States and kind of see like how two different processes can actually lead to the same conclusion. Brazil also has a huge problem with police brutality, also has a huge problem with the impoverishment of Black and brown people, also has a huge problem with inequality and access to health and access to education. So it's a lot of things that come together, but with different contexts. So this book was actually really incredible in that respect. In the end, I gave Scenes of Subjection 5 out of 5 stars. It was incredibly helpful and profoundly interesting despite being very difficult to read. And I'm actually really grateful for having read this book this month because it actually connected to a book that I had been dying to read, which was the next book that I read in the month of February. The next book that I read in the month of February was Beloved by Toni Morrison.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
What can I say about Beloved other than it broke me? It destroyed me. It fucking ruined me. I am not the same person. I haven't stopped thinking about this book ever since I read it. Basically, in Beloved, you're following this woman called Seath. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And she lives in a house that is haunted. And the house is haunted by her child, who she lost while she was escaping slavery. And basically, she didn't have money to write the name of the child in the grave, and she basically wrote Beloved. It was the only thing that she could afford, and this kind of like becomes the girl's name. And this is not spoilers, it's like very heavily implied at the beginning, and also if you know a little bit about Toni Morrison, this probably comes out, but if you really want to skip it, I'm gonna put the timestamp in the description below so you can skip, because I really need to discuss this. Basically, the house is being haunted by Beloved's ghost because Beloved was killed by her mother while she was trying to escape. And she was trying to escape slavery. And when she almost got caught, she slashed the throat of her own daughter. This book was so incredibly difficult to read. It was so fucking painful. And the way that the book was written, like, it went back and forth in the memories and of the characters that existed because trauma does that to you. It really fractures you. It fractures your experience and what you can remember. So it's very difficult to make sense of it all. That's why it's so difficult to make sense of the book. So the book itself tries to convey the sheer difficulty that it is living in a world, carry on living in a world where the best thing that you could do for your child, where you came to a point where you thought that the best thing that you could do for your child was killing them to make sure that they would never see a day of slavery in their life. This book is absolutely fucking insane. Absolutely fucking wild. I don't even know what to say about this book. Like, I'm just shocked at it. Like, I don't even know what to say about this book other than it was so grief heavy. Like I said before, I'm a really fast reader, but this book took 2.5 weeks of my month just for me to get through it because I just needed to put the book down and just take in what I just read. It was absolutely fucking incredible. I have absolutely no clue how I survived this book. It's just so profoundly sad. And it's like the ending of it, like this absolutely unfairness of it. Because like, how can you blame Seth for doing what she did when she lived what she has lived? Oh my god, I cannot overcome this book. This book absolutely fucking broke me. I am not okay. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I gave Beloved by Toni Morrison 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not okay. I don't think I'll ever be okay. And I have a plan of reading a lot of Toni Morrison this year. And if every Toni Morrison book that I will read will be like this, I'm gonna be a fucking mess by the end of the year. There will be no me, no surviving piece of me left to tell the story, because the Toni Morrison will just fucking murder me. Jesus Christ. Finally, the last book that I read in the month of February was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I will insert a clip of me while I was trying a mock-up of a shirt that I was sewing and listening to the last bit of the book on audiobook. There is fairness in the world. I started the month reading Biblical Kissing the Coronavirus, and I finished the month fucking dying. So yeah, basically Clap When You Land, you're following 2 girls who are daughters of the same father, but they don't know about it. And when their father dies in a plane crash, they suddenly realize that everything they knew about their life was a lie. This book was incredibly interesting to me because Elizabeth Acevedo, first things first, what is her writing? I mean, please marry me. But also, I think that she was able to really capture the essence of living in the global south when she was talking in Camino's voice. And I think this is why I related to Camino so much. And I really thought that she really did a really thorough research when she was talking about, you know, the issue of people leading double lives, working in a place, having another family, working in a place and having another family, and how uncommon this was in the United States and how common this was in the Dominican Republic. This was common in Brazil too. My own grandfather has a separate family that we did not know about, so that was fun. It's actually really interesting because she really was able to transcribe in Camino's voice this feeling like it's unfair for some people to have it so easy and for her to have to struggle for everything that she has ever achieved. For instance, when Yahara books a flight to go to the Dominican Republic, and Camino is like, oh, that's just it? Like, she just books a flight and comes over? No, like, groveling over in an embassy, trying to get a visa to travel abroad? Like, no, gathering all of the documents that you need to prove that you're not just in there to steal everyone else's jobs. Nothing of that. She just gets her blue passport and comes over. That, I think I related to Camino so much because she really understood, like, she really had a grasp on how unfair it is that, you know, your land, your space, your area, it's so profoundly shifted to accommodate people who don't give a shit about you. But also, like, Yahira's relationship with her girlfriend, oh my fucking god, that was so adorable. That was so cute. It was like the most supportive relationship I've ever read in a book. Like, they were so sweet together and they were, oh my god. I'm so lonely. Elizabeth Acevedo continues to blow me the fuck out of the water. Like, I am completely in awe of everything that she writes. Her writing in verse is just something that, I don't know, it just makes me feel things. It just does things to me that I don't think I can ever explain. It's just so wild. And I absolutely loved it. I loved Clap When You Land so much. And dare I say, I think I loved Clap When You Land more than when I loved The Poet X. being quite serious here. So yeah. In the end, I gave Clap When You Land 5 out of 5 stars. What was this wrap up? Don't ask me. I don't even know what my reading month was. But there you have it. Let's hope that in March I have a cohesive reading list and I can talk about things cohesively. And also, no fucking the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. I've had enough of that. So yeah, this was the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and I will see you guys next time. Bye!